The afternoon sun streamed through the tall windows of Westfield Academy's auditorium, casting golden light across the polished wooden stage where dozens of 5-year-olds sat in neat rows. Their pastel dresses and pressed uniforms created a rainbow of childhood innocence as they waited for their end-of-year presentation to begin. At the center of the front row sat Sophia Wellington, a tiny girl with platinum blonde hair pulled back in an elegant braid. Her navy blue skirt and crisp white blouse were perfectly pressed, her small hands folded neatly in her lap, but her eyes held a sadness that seemed far too deep for someone so young. Standing at the side of the stage, Grace Matthews smoothed her light blue dress and took a steadying breath. At 28, Grace had been teaching kindergarten for 6 years, but she had never encountered a challenge quite like Sophia Wellington. The little girl had not spoken a single word since starting school 4 months ago. Despite every gentle encouragement Grace could think of, Grace knew that Sophia's father, Richard Wellington, was one of the wealthiest men in the city. Wellington Industries dominated the skyline with its gleaming towers, and Richard's name appeared regularly in business magazines as a visionary CEO who had built an empire from innovative technology investments. But wealth couldn't solve every problem, and Grace had learned that behind Sophia's designer clothes and expensive accessories was a little girl, struggling with grief that no amount of money could heal. Sophia's mother had died in a car accident 8 months ago, and since then, the child had retreated into complete silence. She attended classes, completed her assignments with remarkable intelligence, and interacted with other children through gestures and expressions. But she had not spoken aloud since the tragedy. Richard Wellington sat in the front row of the auditorium, his expensive suit and confident bearing marking him as someone accustomed to success in every aspect of life. But as he watched his daughter sitting motionless on the stage, his usual composure cracked slightly around the edges. Grace had met with Richard several times over the past months, trying to find ways to help Sophia heal. He had hired the best child psychologists money could buy, but none of their strategies had been successful. The little girl remained locked in her silent world, communicating only through nods, shakes of her head, and the occasional written note. "Parents and families," Grace announced to the audience, her voice warm and welcoming. "Thank you for joining us today as our kindergarten class shares some of the wonderful things they've learned this year." The presentation began with children reciting poems, singing songs, and demonstrating simple science experiments. Grace watched Sophia throughout each performance, hoping to see some spark of interest or engagement, but the little girl remained distant and withdrawn. When it came time for the individual presentations, each child stood to share something special they had created or learned. Grace had prepared a backup plan for Sophia, knowing the child would not be comfortable speaking in front of the large audience. "And now," Grace said gently, "Sophia has prepared something very special to share with us." Instead of asking Sophia to speak, Grace walked over to an easel she had positioned near the little girl. On it was a large piece of paper covered with the most beautiful watercolor painting Grace had ever seen created by a 5-year-old. The painting showed a garden filled with flowers of every color imaginable, but at the center was a tree with golden leaves and a swing hanging from one of its branches. On the swing sat 2 figures, one larger and one smaller, holding hands even as they soared through the painted sky. "Sophia created this beautiful artwork," Grace explained to the audience, "and she's going to tell us about it in her own special way." Grace knelt down beside Sophia and spoke to her in a voice barely above a whisper, but audible enough for the nearby microphone to pick up her words. "Sophia, would you like to tell everyone about your painting? You can whisper to me, and I'll share it with them." For a moment, Grace thought her strategy had failed. Sophia sat perfectly still, her eyes fixed on the painting, showing no sign that she intended to respond. Then, something magical happened. Sophia stood up slowly and walked over to her painting. She pointed to the tree with its golden leaves and looked out at the audience with eyes that suddenly seemed brighter than they had in months. "That's the special tree in our backyard," Sophia said, her voice barely audible but clearly heard through the auditorium's sound system. Mommy and I used to swing there every day after school. The auditorium fell completely silent. Even the youngest children seemed to sense that something extraordinary was happening. Sophia pointed to the larger figure on the swing. That's my mommy. She's in heaven now, but when I close my eyes and think really hard, I can still feel her pushing me on the swing. Grace felt tears forming in her eyes as she watched this breakthrough moment. In the audience, Richard Wellington leaned forward in his seat, his own eyes glistening with emotion as he heard his daughter's voice for the first time in 8 months. And this, Sophia continued, pointing to the smaller figure, is me. I'm still on the swing because even though Mommy can't push me anymore, I can feel her love keeping me safe. Sophia turned to face the audience directly, her small voice growing stronger with each word. My teacher, Miss Grace, says that love doesn't go away when people go to heaven. She says it stays in our hearts and helps us be brave. She taught me that it's okay to miss Mommy, and it's okay to feel sad, but it's also okay to be happy and to talk about the good memories. Grace walked over to Sophia and knelt down beside her, offering silent support as the little girl found her courage. I stopped talking because I thought if I didn't say that Mommy was gone, maybe it wouldn't be real, Sophia explained with the profound honesty that only children possess. But Miss Grace helped me understand that talking about Mommy doesn't make her more gone. It helps me remember how much she loved me. The little girl looked directly at her father in the audience. Daddy, I know you miss Mommy too. Miss Grace says we can be sad together and happy together, and that's okay. Richard Wellington stood up from his seat, no longer caring about maintaining his composed business persona. Tears were streaming down his face as he realized that his daughter had not only found her voice again, but had also learned to process her grief in a healthy way. Grace had spent months working patiently with Sophia, never pushing her to speak, but creating countless opportunities for expression through art, play, and gentle encouragement. She had researched childhood grief extensively, consulted with specialists, and developed innovative approaches that honored Sophia's intelligence while respecting her emotional needs. Most importantly, Grace had recognized that Sophia's silence wasn't defiance or inability to learn. It was a little girl's way of protecting herself from overwhelming loss. The breakthrough had come not from forcing speech, but from helping Sophia understand that her feelings were valid and that talking about her mother was a way of honoring their relationship rather than accepting its end. Miss Grace, Sophia said, turning to her teacher, can I tell everyone else something too? Grace nodded encouragingly. Sophia faced the audience again, her confidence growing with each moment of positive response. If any of you are sad about something, you should talk to Miss Grace. She's the best listener in the whole world, and she knows how to help your heart feel better. She doesn't try to make the sad go away because she knows that's not how feelings work. She just helps you understand that you can be sad and brave at the same time. The auditorium erupted in spontaneous applause, but it wasn't the polite clapping typical of school presentations. This was the kind of heartfelt response that comes when people witness something truly extraordinary. Grace stood up and gently placed her hand on Sophia's shoulder. Sophia, I'm so proud of you for sharing your beautiful painting and your important feelings with everyone today. You've taught all of us something very special about courage and love. After the presentation, Richard Wellington approached Grace with an expression of gratitude unlike anything she had ever seen. Miss Matthews, he said, his voice thick with emotion, I don't know how to thank you for what you've done for Sophia. Every expert I consulted told me this could take years, but you somehow found the key to helping her heal. Grace smiled gently. Mr. Wellington, Sophia did the hard work herself. I just provided a safe space for her to process her feelings at her own pace. Sometimes children need permission to grieve before they can find their way back to joy. What you've accomplished goes far beyond typical teaching, Richard continued. You've given me my daughter back, but more than that, you've helped her develop emotional tools that will serve her for the rest of her life. He paused, looking over at Sophia, who was now chatting animatedly with her classmates about her painting. Grace, I need to ask you something. Sophia clearly thrives under your guidance, and I can see that you have exceptional gifts as an educator. Would you consider becoming her private tutor? I can offer you a salary that would allow you to focus entirely on educational innovation, plus resources to develop programs that could help other children facing similar challenges. Grace was touched by the offer, but she looked around the auditorium at all the other children and families who had become part of her world. Mr. Wellington, I'm honored by your trust in me, but I believe Sophia needs to continue developing her social skills with her peers. What I would love is to work with you on creating a program within the school that could help other children who are struggling with loss or trauma. Richard's business mind immediately grasped the potential impact of such an initiative. A funded program that could serve multiple children while keeping Sophia in her familiar environment, he mused. Grace, I think that's a brilliant solution. We could create something that serves as a model for other schools as well. 6 months later, the Wellington Foundation for Children's Emotional Wellness had established programs in 12 schools across the district. Grace had been promoted to lead the initiative while maintaining her classroom teaching, and Sophia had become one of the program's most enthusiastic ambassadors. The little girl who had once retreated into silence now spoke confidently about her experiences and actively helped other children who were facing their own challenges. Her painting of the swing and the golden tree hung in the foundation's offices as a reminder that healing comes not from forgetting our losses, but from learning to carry love forward even through grief. Grace often reflected on that day in the auditorium when a scared little girl had found her voice again. The breakthrough had come not from expensive therapy or revolutionary techniques, but from patient love, creative expression, and the understanding that every child's emotional journey deserves respect and support. In helping Sophia speak again, Grace had also learned something profound about her own calling as an educator. The greatest teaching moments often had nothing to do with academic curriculum and everything to do with helping children understand that their feelings mattered and their voices deserved to be heard. Thank you for listening to this story about the power of patient compassion in helping children heal. If this tale reminded you of a teacher who made a difference in your life or your child's life, please like this video, share it with someone who believes in the importance of emotional support for children, and subscribe for more stories celebrating the educators who see beyond academic performance to nurture the whole child. We'd love to hear in the comments about times when a teacher's understanding helped you or someone you know through a difficult period. Remember, sometimes the most important lessons we learn have nothing to do with textbooks and everything to do with the healing power of feeling truly understood.